It's time for our test on Chapter 5, dealing with inequalities, and this will help us review. Let's begin. Number 1, we are told to solve the inequality and then graph it on a number line. I will provide number lines for you to put graphs on the test. Okay, so to get x by itself, we simply need to add 9 to both sides. We get x is less than 5. So to graph this on a number line, I'm just going to do something very simple since we're doing our own. You can just mark the number we need to put the point at, or the dot. Since there's no or equals to here, we put an open dot, and it's less than, so we shift to the left. Number 2, 6p greater than or equal to 5p minus 3. We need to subtract 5p from both sides because, if you notice, we have variables on both sides of the inequality. So the first step that's recommended is to combine the two terms that have the variable. So I subtracted 5p from both sides, cancels it out over here. 6p minus 5p is 1p. So I get p is greater than or equal to negative 3. So I put negative 3, and since this does have an or equal to, I put a closed dot there. Since it's greater than, I do it to the right. Okay, number 3. Drew currently has 31 comic books in his collection. His friend Connor has 58 comic books. So I'm just going to write Drew 31, Connor 58. Okay, how many more comic books does Drew need to add to his collection in order to have a larger collection than Connor? Now there's more than one way you could solve this. I'm just going to write it as an inequality since that's the focus of this chapter. So Drew has 31. He needs to add an unknown number to it because he wants to have more than Connor. So he wants his total, which is 31 plus the ones he adds on, to be more than 58. So we can subtract 31 from both sides. Greater than. 58 minus 31 is 27. So 27 would not be enough because that would make him equal to Connor's collection, but he wants to be more than that. So he'd want to have more than 27. And the way they word it is at least 28, which that's true. If you have to be bigger than 27, you need at least 28 to get to be bigger than Connor's collection. So the answer is C, at least 28. 4, solve each inequality, graph the solution on a number line. So very similar to what we did in number 1, we have 1/5, what we did in 1 and 2, I should say. 1/5 h is greater than 3. Sorry, I'm at a weird angle. I keep writing up the page. Gotta adjust, hold on. Better. So 1 divided by 5, we want to get rid of this 1/5. So you can think about this one of two ways. You can divide both sides by 1/5. That's completely fine. But dividing by a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal. Well, if you flip this upside down, it's a 5. So we'll multiply both sides by 5, because these 5's cancel, because that's really a 5 over 1, leaving just h. And 3 times 5 is 15. So our solution is that h is greater than 15. So our graph will mark 15, put an open dot there because there's no or equal to, and it says greater than, so I'll shift to the right, just like that. Number 5, 7w is less than or equal to negative 42. So we need to get the w by itself, so we divide both sides by 7. We get w is less than or equal to negative 6. Since it's or equals to, we put a closed dot. Since it's less than, we shade to the left. 6. Negative 2/3 t is greater than or equal to 24. Okay, you can do this in one step by multiplying both sides by -3/2. Again, dividing by a fraction is the same as multiplying by its reciprocal. So if you multiply both sides by -3/2, that will work. But I'm just going to choose to do it in 2 steps. I think it works out a little easier that way. So I know I want to get rid of this 3. The 3 is being divided, so I need to multiply both sides by 3. So those 3's cancel, leaving -2t. And 24 times 3 is 72. Now I need to divide both sides by -2. Cancels out here. We have to flip the inequality sign because of the negative that we divided by. And 72 divided by -2 is -36. So I would put a closed dot on -36. And since it's less than, I'd shade to the left. And again, the closed dot is because we have an or equal to right there. Number 7, -9m is less than -36. So I've got to get the m by itself, so I divide both sides by -9. Because I divided by a negative number, I have to flip the inequality to make it greater than, and -36 divided by -9 is +4. So I mark 4, put an open circle, and since it's greater than 4, I shade to the right. Number 8 is 3c minus 7 is less than 11. So I will add 7 to both sides. We get 3c is less than 18. We divide both sides by 3. We get c is less than 6. So we can put, because there's no or equal to, we put an open circle on 6. Because it's less than, we shade to the left. Number 9. g/4 plus 3 is less than or equal to -9. I need to move the constant first, so I'll subtract 3 from both sides. Gives me g/4 is less than or equal to -12. Then to get rid of the 4, we need to multiply both sides by 4. The 4's cancel on the left side, and -12 times 4 is -48. Now I'll graph it in just a second, but I want to point one thing out. So if you look up at number 7, we divided both sides by -9. Because of that, that's why we had to flip the inequality sign. We did not have to flip it because of the 36 being negative. That makes no difference. It's because what we divided both sides by was negative. We had to flip the sign. So that's why I did not flip the sign here on number 9. Yes, we did multiply 4 by -12, but that 12 in its sign doesn't affect the inequality sign. We were multiplying both sides by +4, so that's why no change was needed. So I put a closed dot on -48 because of the or equal to, and it's less than, so I shade to the left. Okay, 10. -2 times x minus 4 is greater than 5x minus 13. Okay, first thing I need to do is distribute. So I'll distribute the -2. -2 times x is -2x. -2 times -4 is +8. Or you could look at it as minus -8, but minus a negative turns into plus a positive, so that's why I went ahead and did that. Okay, now I want to combine the variables together, so I'll subtract 5x from both sides. -2x minus 5x is -7x. Then I subtract 8 from both sides. I get 7x is greater than -21. Sorry, this is negative. Don't forget that. Then we divide both sides by -7. We get x is less than, because we divided by a negative number, we have to flip the inequality sign, and negative 21 divided by negative 7 is positive 3. So to graph this, we'll put an open circle at 3 because there's no or equal to sign, and we'll shade to the left because it's less than. Okay, number 11, the 8th grade science class is going to the zoo. The class can spend up to $300 on admission. And then there's a table in the book that says that students cost $8, adults cost $10. Okay, so first it says write an inequality for this situation. So we know their budget is $300. It's okay if they spend less than that. It's okay if they spend exactly that, but not more than that. They didn't tell us how many students or adults are going, so we'll just say 8 times the number of students plus 10 times the number of adults has to be less than or equal to 300. So again, they didn't tell us how many students were going, but we know however many go, we'll have to multiply by 8 to figure out their cost. They don't tell us how many adults are going, but they said we know however many they have, each of them will cost $10. So that's why I did this, to figure out the cost of the tickets for the whole group. Then their budget says they can spend up to $300, so they can spend less than that or exactly that, but not more than that. So that's part A of number 11. Now B says, if there are 32 students and one adult for every 8, one adult for 8 students, can the entire class go to the zoo? Okay, so we know the total number of students, but we've got to do a little bit of work here to figure out the number of adults. It says one adult for every 8 students. Well, 8 goes into 32 4 times. So that means there are 4 adults that will go. So 32 students and 4 adults. So I plug 32 in for S. I'm using this equation we did, or the inequality we did in part A, plus 10 times 4, less than or equal to 300. 8 times 32, I believe it's 256. Let me think about that. 8 times 2 is 16. 30 times 8 is 240, yeah. And then 10 times 40 is $40. And 256 plus 40 is $296. So there will be enough money for them to go because 296 is less than 300. So yes, the whole class can go. Okay, our next problems have to do with compound inequalities. That's the ones that have and or. So number 12, we have y minus 8 is less than negative 3, or y plus 5 is greater than 19. So I'll solve this. I'll add 8 to both sides right here. Get y is less than 5. I'll subtract 5 over here and get y is greater than 14. Okay, so my two numbers I need to mark are 5 and 14. And I know there'll be open circles because there's no or equals to on either one of those. Now, y is less than 5. So I'm just going to graph it below first. Open circle shaded to the left because it's less than. Y is greater than 14, open circle, greater than 14. So we shade to the right. And since it's or, we need to include both of these in our final answer. So this is one of the kind that will look like two lines going opposite directions, but they're not connected in the middle. Okay, 13. This starts as one long inequality with two inequality signs. So that means it's an and form. Anytime you have one long inequality with two inequality signs, that's always the and version of compound inequalities. So I need to split this up into two pieces. I do the first piece and the middle piece. Then I do the middle piece and the right piece. Okay, so we need to add 5 to both sides, giving me -6 is less than or equal to 2h. Divide both sides by 2, I get -3 is less than or equal to h. Now this answer is completely correct written the way it is, but it'll be easier. Let's see, do we have to graph? Yes. It'll be easier to graph if I put the variable on the left, so I'll flip it so it says h is greater than or equal to -3. So if they're just asking you to solve, this answer is just as good as this answer, but it's easier to graph when the variable's on the left. On this side, we add 5 to both sides. Then we divide by 2. We get h is less than or equal to 9. And remember, this is an and statement, because that's always the truth when we have one long inequality with two signs. Okay, I'm going to do the graph over here. We know -3 is something to mark, and we know 9 is something to mark. And this is an and, so we will only shade where they overlap. So h is greater than or equal to -3. Close dot at -3. Greater than means we shade to the right. H is less than or equal to 9. Closed circle at 9. Because of the or equals to, we shade to the left. So they overlap. The only place both of them are present is from -3 to 9. So we put closed circles at both, because that's what we have here, and we shade in between. Okay, 14. 3z minus 2 is greater than -5, and 7z plus 4 is less than -17. So I'll add 2 to both sides. Get 3z is greater than -3. Divide both sides by 3, and I get z is greater than -1. On this one, I'll subtract 4 from both sides and get 7z is less than -21. Divide both sides by 7, and I get z is less than -3. Now remember, this is an and, so we'll want to shade where these overlap. So I know -1 and 3, -3 and -1 are my two spots I need to mark. Now it says z is greater than -1, so I put an open circle at -1 and shade to the right because it's greater than. It's less than -3, so I put an open circle at -3, shade to the left. Now if this was an or question, we would just graph what we see, because or is happy if either one of them are true, but and is only happy if they are both true in the same spot. So since these two never overlap, that means the graph should just stay blank, because there is no solution to this. You can write the words no solution or do the 0 with the slash through it. Those both mean no solution. And if you think about this, it should make sense. There's no way something can be bigger than -1 and smaller than -3. Okay, 15, we are having to translate a sentence and then solve. It says the difference of a number and 4. Difference means subtract, so I do n minus 4. That's the difference of a number and 4 is no more than means less than or equal to 8. So then to solve, we just add 4 to both sides. We get n is less than or equal to 4. Sorry. Let me try that again. It turns out, ladies and gentlemen, 8 plus 4 is not 4. In fact, 8 plus 4 is 12, which makes a lot more sense. The reason I caught my mistake was I looked back and said, wait, the difference of a number and 4 is no more than 8. I said, well, 4 minus 4 is not more. That doesn't line up with 8. So, anywho, it's n is less than or equal to 12. Okay, for 16, 9 times a number decreased by 4 is at least 23. So if it's at least 23, that means it's 23 or more. So we would say greater than or equal to 23. Then we add 4 to both sides. Get 9n greater than or equal to 27. Then we divide both sides by 9, and we get n is greater than or equal to 3. (17) Write a compound inequality for the graph shown below. So I'll just do a rough sketch of the graph here. Got a closed circle at -2, then shade it down. Closed circle at +3, shaded up. Okay, so I know it's multiple choice. Sorry I didn't have that visible. I know it's multiple choice in the book, but I'm just going to try to help us look at this and think, what would it be? Well, first of all, I know it has to be an or question because there's no way for us to have two separate pieces unless it's an or. So as we look at this, this is -2 or smaller. So we'd say x is less than or equal to -2. I know it's less than because it shades to the left. I know it's or equal to because it's a closed circle. This one would say x is greater than or equal to 3 because it is or equal to because the closed dot at 3. It's bigger numbers than 3 that are shaded, so it's greater than or equal to 3. And that lines up with B on the multiple choice. Okay, 18, we are shifting to the absolute value. So remember these, you have to set up two different inequalities because of the absolute value. So p minus 5, absolute value p minus 5 is less than 3. So we start by doing one inequality that's written just like this one, but without the absolute value. Then we write one where the side on the left stays the same, but we change it to greater than -3. So we have to do two changes. We have to flip the inequality sign and change the sign of the answer. So to get one solution, we'll add 5 to both sides. To get this solution, we'll also add 5 to both sides. And if we look back at the beginning, because this is a less than, anytime we start with less than, it's an and equation. So I need to mark 2 and 8. So p is less than 8, so open circle at 8, shade to the left, less than. Open circle at 2, greater than, shade to the right. So where these overlap is from 2 to 8. And we just imitate the open circles these two have. And connect the two of them in between. So I'm getting a new pin. This one's about done. It take me a minute to get. Oh, good. It went right away. Okay, 19. Same style of problem. 2f plus 7. Absolute value of 2f plus 7 is greater than or equal to 21. So I write one inequality that's identical to that one, just without the absolute value. Then I write one where the part on the left is the same, but I flip the inequality sign and make the answer negative. So with both, I'll subtract 7 on both sides. Then I'll divide both sides by 2. Okay. If I went too fast, feel free to pause and look over it again. Looking back, we started with a greater than, so we do an or. So we'll put on the final answer anywhere either of these two show up. So this one, we would put a closed dot at 7 and shade above that because it's greater than. For this one, we put a closed dot at -14 and shade below that because it's less than. So we'll end up with a 2-arrow answer looking something like this. Number 20, absolute value of -4m plus 3 less than or equal to 15. So we write the equation just as it is. and we write the equation same on the left, but change the inequality sign, flip it around, and make the answer negative. Okay, I think you guys are good at solving these. I'm going to do this pretty quickly. Subtract 3, subtract 3. We have 4m is less than or equal to 12. Divide by 4, divide by 4. M is less than or equal to 3. Over here we subtract 3, subtract 3. So we get negative 4m greater than or equal to negative 18. Just double check this. This is going to give a decimal, which is fine. Just want to make sure I'm doing this correctly. This is 20. Yeah, good. Okay. So then we divide both sides by 4, or negative 4, excuse me. And since we divide by a negative, we have to flip the inequality sign, make it a less than or equal to. And the two negatives will cancel, and 18 over 4 can reduce to 9 halves. Or if it's easier, you can just type that in the calculator. It's 4.5. And again, look back here. This is a less than, so this is an and question. So my two numbers I need to mark are 3 and 4.5. Oh, wait, I messed up somewhere. Let's back up. Look back here. I did what I've seen you guys do. Not your fault, just saying I've seen you guys make this mistake too. I forgot to keep this negative on the 4. So I had to divide both sides by negative 4. So that means I do still have m, but I have to flip the inequality sign because I divided by a negative. And 12 divided by negative 4 is negative 3. So it's actually negative 3 I need to be concerned and mark. So I have a closed dot at negative 3, and we shade it up because it's greater than. I have a closed dot at 4.5 and shade it left because it's less than. So the way these two overlap is from negative 3 to 4.5. Both have closed dots or closed circles, and we draw a line to connect the two. Okay, last one of this type, we have the absolute value of x minus 3 over 4 is greater than 5. So I do know it's an or question because it has greater than. So I write one equation just as it is, but without the absolute value sign. Then I write one equation not changing the left side, but flipping the inequality sign, making the answer negative. So I'll multiply both sides by 4. Get x minus 3 is greater than 20. Then I add 3 to both sides. Get x is greater than 23. Again, this is going to be an or question. Over here, we'll multiply both sides by 4. We get x minus 3 is less than negative 20. Then I add 3 to both sides. Get x is less than negative 17. Okay, since this is an or, I know I'm going to graph anywhere they show up. So I'm just going to do it straight on the graph this time. This one, we have an open circle at 23 because there's no or equals to. And it says greater than 23, so we shade it to the right to include bigger numbers than 23. This one, we mark at negative 17. And we do an open circle because there's no or equals to. And it's less than, so we shade it to the left to cover all the numbers that are smaller or less than negative 17. Okay, let me grab some graph paper to do the last two, 23 and 24. Oops, sorry, I'm upside down. Here we go. So for 23, our inequality is y is less than 4x minus 1. We want to first make sure the inequality is in slope-intercept form, which this is. To graph, we always want to start with a y-intercept, which is the constant, the number by itself. So our y-intercept, the place this line will hit the y-axis is at negative 1. So I can put a point right here at negative 1. Now the slope of this line is 4, or I can say 4 over 1. So I know from that y-intercept, to get the next point, I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1. Since there is no equals to, this is going to be a dotted line. So it looks something like that. Now, 0, 0 is not on the line, so we can use that. 0, 0 is over on this side of the line. If you look closely, the line's just to the right of the origin. So I'll choose 0, 0, testing this side over here. I plug in 0 for x and 0 for y, and I get 0 is less than -1. However, that's not true. 0 is bigger than -1. So since when we tested this point over here on this side, that means the left side is all false. We do not shade it. Instead, we shade over on the right side. Last one, 24. 2x plus 3y is greater than or equal to 12. Okay, we need to make sure this is in slope-intercept form. It is not, so I need to rearrange the equation so it is. So I'll start by subtracting 2x from both sides. So that gives me 3y greater than or equal to -2x plus 12. Then to get y all the way by itself, we need to divide everything by 3. So the 3's cancel. I'll get y is greater than or equal to -2/3 x. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So that's -2/3 x plus 4. Now that we're in slope-intercept form, we can start the graph. We start by graphing the point at the y-intercept, which is +4. So on the y-axis, I put a point at 4. My slope is -2/3. That tells me from this point, I should go down 2 and to the right 3 to get to the next point. So I start here on the y-intercept and go down 1, 2, over 1, 2, 3. Since this is greater than or equal to, I put a solid line through this one. And just like the others, I can use the origin 0, 0, plug in 0 for x, plug in 0 for y. I get 0 is greater than or equal to 4. As you know, 0 is not greater than 4, nor is it equal to it. So that means this entire side over here is false. Doesn't work. We have to shade what's above the line instead.